Thomas here on behalf of the Continuing Education Committee to discuss the DSD's new online permitting system. Before I go a little bit into JC's background, couple things to note. The first thing is we will be recording this meeting and posting it to our YouTube page. That way you guys can view it after the meeting. But just keep in mind, you might want to keep your camera turned off. That way we don't have everyone's faces in the bottom of the YouTube video. Second thing is we will be using the chat feature for questions. So if you guys have any questions for JC, feel free to put those into the chat box, and then we'll address those once he's done with his presentation. So we'll just go through those one by one and address the questions once he's done with his talk. So JC Thomas is the Assistant Director of the Development Services Department for the City of San Diego. In his position, he is responsible for the digital transformation, innovation initiatives, and operations support for the department. His department provides review, permit, inspection, and code enforcement services for private and public development projects throughout the city to ensure healthy, safe, and livable neighborhoods. Prior to joining Development Services, JC served as director with Sempra Infrastructure, developing energy infrastructure in the United States, Mexico, and South America. JC previously held positions in regulatory affairs, customer service, fire preparedness, and public affairs for San Diego Gas and Electric. He began his career with the City of San Diego in 1993 as an intern with the mayor's office and served as chief of policy for the San Diego City Council. JC is a graduate of San Diego State University with a degree in public administration with emphasis in city planning. As a native San Diegan, JC enjoys ocean swimming at La Jolla Cove, cycling San Diego streets, and running along Mission Bay. So JC, I will turn it over to you now.
Hey, thank you, Jen, and thank you everybody for joining this webinar today. And I hope you'll find some interest in some of the things that the City of San Diego and Development Services is doing to transform and keep up with the trends that are happening in our industry with the building and construction trades. I know that innovation is taking place all around us. And that circumstances, in particular this year with the COVID-19, has really kind of thrusted us forward even faster maybe than we would have expected. And we're taking advantage of what's before us, the use of technology to make our lives hopefully better in the long run, safer, and that we can continue to perform at a high level in serving our customers, which are many of you that build infrastructure throughout the city of San Diego. I'm going to walk you through some of the changes that that have taken place since COVID-19. We'll talk about online permitting and what that means for our customers in the future, virtual inspections and how we've deployed virtual inspection and using technology to help save time and resources in doing inspections. And then we'll wrap it up with what we call Development Services Department's new blueprint, which is part of our future in innovation. Before I begin, I do want to acknowledge a couple of my colleagues that are hopefully on the line with me. Kelly Charles, she's our chief building official. She's our deputy director with the Building Construction and Safety Division. And then Ali Fatah. And Ali Fatah is also, well, first of all, he's a longtime employee with Development Services, but he's also a member of your organization. And I want to recognize both of them for being here. And also that when we get into the end of the presentation and get into the chat feature, I may be relying upon them to help address any questions. As you heard in my introduction, I don't have any responsibility for plan review, so please don't ask me about any specific plans or projects that you might have, but I do have responsibility for the transformation to the digital initiatives, and that's our online permitting and the technology that we're deploying to help our reviewers who are doing the work that all of you rely upon, depend upon every day, will be able to leverage into the future. So with that, I'm going to start with a brief background on Development Services. So we are responsible as the department for regulating and managing land use and building development throughout the city of San Diego. We review 50,000 plus applications and approvals each year that come through Development Services. They range in anything from single family, multifamily, residential, commercial, affordable and infill housing, industrial complex major land developments. As we're seeing, there are quite a number of those happening at this time. What are complex major discretionary land development projects? 5G. 5G has really taken off in the last year and a half, taking up both a lot of staff time and a lot of construction out there in the public right-of-way. We also have traffic control and then signs. In addition to those things, and these are really the basic things that we're responsible for, we have new initiatives that come up from time to time, and you hear about them or read about them in the newspaper. The most recent one was temporary outdoor business permit. That would allow for restaurants, retail, even hair salons to operate outside because of the COVID-19 restriction. Scooters. So we all have heard various stories or read stories or even ridden on scooters. And that is another activity that fairly new that we regulate here at Development Services. Cannabis. Cannabis, when the laws were changed a couple of years ago in California that legalized cannabis sales and distribution and manufacturing. That's another activity that it's a discretionary approval process that we regulate here at Development Services Department. So just to give you a little flavor of, we try to keep up with the trends of what's happening in, I'm going to say, the commercial marketplace, and it affects what we do and how we need to marshal our resources to not only take care of the basic things that come through Development Services every single day, but also these new and changing things. Another, just kind of at a glance of what we do, performing inspections is an important part of our function, that we want to make sure that when projects are constructed, whether they're inside of a building or on the outside in the right-of-way, that we're able to perform our inspections, that it meets the state of California or our local ordinances and in compliance with the code. We respond to calls for information in appointments and records. So we are the repository of all building records within the city of San Diego. We do have records dating back to 1955. The story goes that we had a fire at City Hall in that year. We lost a number of records at that point. We still have some that date back a little further than that, but the bulk of them are really in place since 1955. And we have an initiative to transform those records into a digital format so that in the future, as a customer, you won't have to come down and pull the records of your building. You can do that hopefully virtually in a digital way and not in a physical hard copy way. We perform plan checks. So plan checks are the old term, we call it plan review now, but plan checks are essentially a customer coming in with their set of plans. We review and make sure that it aligns with what the municipal code requirements are or what the state of California requirements might be for the particular project. Oftentimes we'll give the comments back to the customer, they in a red line or even some written comments, and they'll do what we call resubmittal and then send their comments back. And then we issue permits. And so, you know, obviously that's one of the most important functions out of all that process is that the customer will have the permit at the end of the process and can begin their project. We also have hearings that with discretionary actions, we need to take projects to the city council. We have a hearing officer or planning commission. So those types of activities involve the public, and the public can weigh in on projects, and so can the decision makers in the case of the council or the hearing officer or the planning commission. And the key metrics on the right-hand side, just to give you a snapshot of the different types of approvals and permits that come through. And it is vast, and the variety, as you can see, is significant. We also have a code enforcement division. And code enforcement division is based on a complaint response. So, you know, we typically don't proactively go out and do code enforcement actions unless we see egregious violations. They're generally driven by complaints. We expect that, and our city council has, you know, made the determination that we expect the public will comply with the codes. And so we are on a complaint-driven basis, and we do respond, and oftentimes we'll have to take more assertive action if we find complaints out there or violations of the code. Most of it's around public safety, building code safety. If we see issues with that, then we require that the property owner come into compliance And oftentimes that means submitting plans to the city for getting conformance permits and getting permits, even if it's after the fact, to make sure that we have the inspection covered and the building and structure is safe. So what's changed? And what's changed has also changed for all of you, and that is for at least the city of San Diego, March 12th was an important day. That's when we had a declaration of emergency in the city. We also had the county, we had the state of California, we had national emergencies. We had declarations that changed the way that we operate. We were a in-person service operation up until that point, where customers would come in, they would meet with us in person across the counter. We would review projects across those counters. We would have meetings. They would pay their permit fees in person. We also had it online, but we had a lot of personal contact with our customers. After March the 12th, we had to close our doors to the public, but we are an essential service, so we had to remain open. And what that meant for us and our employees is that we had to find ways of using technology and leveraging that to the best of our ability, and that it aligned with what our customers' expectations were. And so one of the first things that we did is we began outfitting many of our employees with computer equipment so that they can telecommute. Some had their own personal equipment at home and had the ability to use it. Others, we had to provide some equipment for them. And we had to pivot toward virtual meetings, much like this, where we could meet with the customer either by telephone or by a Teams meeting or a Skype or GoToMeeting or Zoom or any of those applications that are out there. We began utilizing those right away. We also had to implement new safety protocols and continued to change them for our employees and field inspectors as conditions out there with COVID-19 and lessons learned were applied. And so you'll see a lot with our inspection protocols have changed quite a bit since we first began during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then the biggest change, really fundamental change, both from you could say a cultural and a business process standpoint, was the full implementation of online permitting that we're going to get into today. We have a system, I'm going to say a homegrown, developed right here at Development Services, called PTS. It's a project tracking system that we've used for 20 years. We've been in the process of replacing that with a cloud-based permitting system with a company called Acela that was initiated about 4 years ago. And we actually put modules in for electrical and plumbing and mechanical for minor types of permits, and solar PV for residential that are on slanted roofs, not the flat roofs, transportation and traffic control. All that's been online for a couple of years. Our code enforcement tools and some of our field inspection tools have been online using iPads. And we were in the process of developing the more complex online permitting tool with discretionary ministerial projects when COVID-19 hit us in March. And I think it was around March the 15th where we recognized that we needed to do something immediately to deal with COVID-19. We knew that COVID-19 restrictions were going to be in place for some time. We didn't have exactly a time horizon, but we knew that if things got worse, that if someone in our building, one of our employees contracted the virus, or our customers, and we couldn't receive paper plans anymore. And we were receiving these paper plans on the first floor as a drop-off zone, having to quarantine. We knew that's not sustainable, that we had to shift to an online solution ASAP. And that's what we did. And it took us about 6 weeks. It was 5 weeks of development, about 1 week of training for our reviewers. And in that latter couple of weeks, we started doing some outreach to customers. We turned on the online permitting on May the 4th. So what that means from, I guess you could say, our customer standpoint, and this is a very high level and very simplistic way of showing what it's all about, but it really is the basics of what we're doing with online permitting. As you can see, the picture on your left is a very typical set of plans that would come in rolls or folded sheets of paper. Sometimes there would be multiple sets of plans, depending upon the complexity of the project, because we had parallel reviews going on. You know, you'd have a structural review occurring at the same time you might have a zoning review or a landscape review happening, or an electrical plan that was being reviewed, all for that same project. And it was developed like that at the city of San Diego because, number one, we're a complex organization and we're a large city and we have a large number of reviewer disciplines, and we did everything in-house. We didn't rely upon third-party reviewers. We have to do things within the city of San Diego. You go to other jurisdictions that might be smaller, they'll take on a review cycle and do everything as one discipline, or they'll use a third-party reviewer to assist them with that. Ours was developed in a way to give customers more convenience, that you can have different disciplines give you comments back, and you can begin making corrections or changes on particular disciplines so that you could speed up your time in getting your permit. But when you shift that to digital, we had to shift the way that we conduct that process as well. And so that's what I mean by a bit of a cultural shift for our customers and our reviewers, that we can't do those in the same way that we did with the paper transmittals. So in a high level, what's happening is the customers are applying for an online permit. The plans and documents are reviewed by a DSD reviewer, all electronically using PDF files, and then DSD issues an electronic permit, and then construction begins and inspections are able to be completed. Going into a little bit more detail, I'm going to show you kind of a step-by-step of how this actually occurs. First, the customer will visit our website, DSD, and to complete an application form, a very basic form that in a high level describes the project. Then our customer will receive a PTS number, that's our project tracking system, and instructions on how to submit plans. And then the next step is the customer creates an open DSD account and uploads their plans in a PDF format. It is a process of doing that. It takes a fair amount of time because you're now talking about doing a complete application online from your computer, from your office, instead of coming down into the building. And so you have to have everything prepared and ready to submit online when that occurs. And once you've done all that, the customer will receive a confirmation back from Development Services saying the submittal is complete and you can begin the process of review. But as we know, some customers don't always have all the documents the first time around, so we may require additional documents and we'll notify the customers at that time. What's interesting is that prior to COVID-19, I think we had for our online permitting somewhere around 5,000 or so open DSD accounts. That means an individual will come in and create an account to submit electronically for a solar PV or one of those minor mechanical, electrical, plumbing type permits. I think we're over 16,000 now, or 16,500 was the last count of the number of online accounts, and we expect that number is going to continue to grow. We don't have a cap on the number of accounts or anything like that, but it's just an anecdote that I thought I would share with you of how quickly things have changed for us for online permitting. Step 2 in the process is now that we've received all of the documents electronically, we verified just the way we did in paper, our submittal staff would check and make sure that each of the documents that are required for that type of project have been received. We'll send an invoice the way we did prior, and the applicant will pay the invoice for the project to be deemed complete. Once it's deemed complete, it's sent to reviewers, whether you're a structural or mechanical or electrical discipline or zoning or landscaping, and the submittal and review process will begin. Oftentimes, in that review process, there's corrections required, and the customer will upload their plans, and that cycle may continue a couple of times through and until we finally get to a final set. And once we have the final I'm going to say complete set, DSD will then notify the customer to submit the final plans for permitting. And that's really the last step in the review process. So that gets us to sort of this step 3, where the customer will upload their final plans in open DSD for permit issuance. DSD will then stamp the final plans and send an invoice. This is really for the inspection, or if there's any additional fees. Some of those larger water sewer capacity charges, for example, or development impact fees would be paid once that final permit is issued, and we'll release those plans back to the customer. Customer would pay the final permit fees, and customer is then responsible for printing the final set for on-site construction and have a set available, and then the project could begin. Construction commences, inspections start, and really that concludes the online permitting steps. One of the things that we're responsible for doing at the end of that process is retaining a digital record of the plans, which we do, and we lock them down so that only the customer and/or architect have access to those, along with our records division online. So you can go back into your record and check your documents if you need to. We would also send a copy to the County of San Diego electronically, and then we would provide Mylars, if Mylars are required, still in a printed form. So those will still continue to be printed for a period of time until we can transition away from the printed Mylars that would be required. Here's an example of a set of plans that came in, and we have the electronic stamp that's now on those plans. In the old days, in the paper form, you would have a stamp and then also, or maybe several stamps in a set of perforated all the way through set of plans, and that's the final stamping. This allows us to put in and embed a watermark on the complete set of plans on every single page. So that way the inspectors can easily identify that it's been permit issued, and easier for us and for the customer. There is a process that's also involved with discretionary, and we do provide, so for example, planning groups or town councils, or even third-party agencies, Caltrans or Sandag, if they're involved in either a ministerial or discretionary action, we can electronically send them a link to view the latest project documents. If those documents are replaced with a newer version, the link remains the same, and we just replace the document that they would be looking at. So, and we still handle those communications the way that we always did. Nothing changes with that protocol, but I thought you should be aware of that. Because this new process is different, and that customers can upload their plans and documents from the comfort of their home. They can do it on the weekend. They can do it at 2 in the morning. We have records of documents that come in at all times of the day and night. We developed a user guide. It gives step-by-step instructions, and you can download this. It's a PDF file or video. I call it easy steps on how to create an OpenDSD account, creating a new PTS project application, uploading your documents, resubmitting documents, final plans, and permit received. The key thing, though, is if you're using this online portal, you're uploading documents, you have to follow the user guide. If you miss one step, it'll let you know. You'll get an error, and you'll have to go back and correct the error in your uploading of documents. And because it's a hybrid, we're using our old PTS system along with the OpenDSD and the Acela system. There are still some challenges with it that we've learned along the way and have made it a little bit more challenging for us and our customers. When we do the fully cloud-based permitting, and it is still on schedule for later this year, a lot of those challenges that we've had that will smooth out, they'll go away, and won't be a problem for us anymore. But because we're using a dual system, it just requires a little bit more effort in going through the permit application and approval process to make sure we have all the documents lined up. And to give you an example of that, when you're uploading documents into our OpenDSD system as an applicant, you now have to select the document type name, and there's a list. It's all alphabetical, but you have to choose from the list of 450 different document types. And so in the past, in the paper form, we would do that for the customer and tag the document types. But because we're not there sitting with you at the comfort of your computer, that we had to provide that list to you. When we have the full cloud-based permitting, it'll streamline that, where you won't have that full list. It'll be categorized based upon the type of permit you're applying for, and then the document type, and then you'll be able to tag it. It'll be much faster, and you won't have to look through a list of that length. So since May the 4th, and this, we're probably over 6,500 electronic submittals received. We're probably somewhere over 7,000 now, because every day that number changes. But we've also changed a few things since May the 4th. We announced that construction changes can be resubmitted electronically, previously that if you started in paper, we asked that you finish in paper, or if you had construction changes, you do them in paper. We're now asking that if someone has a construction change and they want to do a resubmittal, that if they have a scanned version of their final set, they can submit that along with their construction changes electronically, and that will help expedite things and hopefully cut down on time processing and cost. And then new customer online forums, helping customers track their project. We have some tools available in Open DSD. If you can't find them yourself, you can submit a form and we'll have someone look up your project and find the project status for you. And then on July the 1st, we transitioned to all permit types. So all permits within the City of San Diego Development Services are now online, all electronic. We do no more paper permits unless you had started in paper prior to the July 1st date. And so what's next? Well, we're going to complete the implementation of the full cloud-based electronic review later this year. That full cloud-based electronic review will give our reviewers more features and more tools to pull up the plans using an electronic plan software that is designed for reviewers to go into the plans and write comments and provide feedback to customers. It's more seamless and much better than using the PDF and Adobe. What we're using is either Adobe Pro or Adobe to review the plans. And then we're going to keep asking for feedback from our customers on how we can improve the experience. You know, every day and every week we learn things and get feedback from customers and make some tweaks here and there to make sure that our system continues to remain as smooth running as possible. Not always easy. We have a variety of customers that are using this electronic system that were using paper before. If you think about it, this new Acela system is designed for us to review a project anywhere on the scale of complexity of a Petco park or a high-rise downtown or a major infrastructure in the public right-of-way, all the way down to, let's say, a sign permit or a traffic control permit that might be much more simple, single discipline type thing. So, or even a water heater permit. So keep in mind that when you look at a system like that, you have to design it in a way that is robust enough to serve all of the needs, including all the future needs of a jurisdiction like ours, but then also hopefully simple enough for the customer to be able to engage with it and use the tool, and that we have the right information out there to help guide the customer into using it. But it's still going to be a learning curve for many of us over the coming months and then probably into next year. I have one slide here that I wanted to share with you and it's a list to show you what we've done with virtual inspections. And so this also coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, that we realized that virtual inspections was something that we had to really seriously look at to see if it was a way in which we can reduce the engagement of field inspectors going out onto a project site and coming in close contact with other people, that if there's a way in which we can reduce that or even eliminate that, we ought to seriously consider that. We began looking at a number of different technologies and tools that were out there. And what we recognized that because, well, COVID-19 and the situation that we were in, we wanted to use something that our customers would have access to, make it easy for them, and use something that was either low cost or even no cost, so that we didn't have a long ramp up time in trying to deploy a technology or tool. How can we use our iPads? How can we use our smartphones that our field inspectors have, or computers for that matter, and customers using the same types of technology? And so we went with a Google Meet platform, because we have the Google G Suite within the City of San Diego as a technology application, and deployed that on July 23rd. And most of these are for the more simple types of inspections. But as you can see, it is a wide ranging that is now something that can be done using a smartphone. And what happens is a customer will call for a special inspection. We call it, for the virtual inspection, a special inspection. We schedule it in advance. We're able to look at the video that the customer is showing on the type of improvement or construction activity on that list, and document it, and then sign off on our system that the inspection is either complete and passed, or that changes need to be made. if for some reason don't find that the technology works for a particular inspection, we'll go out physically to make sure that it's conducted and it's safe. So those are the types of inspections that are listed, and you can see them, PV charging stations, water repipes and temp power, ground-mounted solar, drywall and stucco mesh. This list may continue to grow depending upon the feedback we get from customers in the construction industry. And hopefully will be a tool that will last beyond a COVID-19 pandemic. We think it's going to be a useful tool because it reduces the vehicle miles traveled for field inspectors and cuts down on time spent going from location to location, saves on gas and fuel and miles driven. And hopefully safety, improves safety for everybody. So we'll continue to look at that and seek feedback from customers and also look at new applications that come out. So while we went with, I'm going to say the low cost, no cost for this year, because we wanted to deploy it right away and not have to go out to bid to buy a piece of technology when we had something readily available. Things are changing so fast for us that we're going to continue to look at other applications that are being developed right now, and some are being tested out in the field for field inspectors that have a lot more features, of capturing video that can be stored, in the cloud and documented, and some other things that are happening. And lastly, I want to wrap up with our new blueprint. So it was about a year ago that Development Services recognized that things were changing in our industry, things were changing with technology, and that we needed to keep pace with that we were going to transition away from a paper-driven permitting process to an electronic permit process, that we needed to continue to develop our department and our employees using innovation. And so we developed this new blueprint. The new blueprint is eventually going to be a document, electronic document that we put online for our customers to review and see, so they have a better understanding of what it is that Blueprint's all about. But I wanted to highlight a couple of things so you could see them and what they mean. So first of all, we have online now a new ZAP GIS tool. The ZAP, which is basically a zoning information GIS tool, you can go online to our website and you can look up your parcel, your property, and look at 57 different layers of GIS information to see what might be impacting your ability to construct a project. These are layers that either are within the city of San Diego, for example, like zoning layers, if you want to know zoning, airport overlay zones, so they might be another jurisdiction like that. It could be FEMA and floodplain map area. So all of that information is now in one location. Prior to that ZAP, and we launched it in July, prior to having that available online, a customer would have to come into Development Services, sit with us, and it would probably take about a 30-minute appointment to input all of the data into a computer and pull out a simple sheet and show them on a map what the GIS layers were that would affect their property. Now all that it can be done seamlessly and virtually and is accessible to anybody. We also implemented e-recording, so agreements, discretionary permits, things that require any recording with the County of San Diego. We now have 2 computers that are dedicated, and I say dedicated because they are locked down and connected into the County of San Diego's e-recording system. So we are talking to them, and this is something where we physically had to walk down to the county a couple of times a week. We had a couple of specialists that would take the recording documents and submit those to the county. We're now able to do online. So that's another way in which we're showing that we can use innovation and technology and use electronic processing to cut down on staff time and spend time on other more important things. And then one of the things that we're really proud about, I know Kelly and her team, is we launched a program to help with American Disabilities Act information and access. It's called Ask a CASP, and it's an online portal. You can submit your question or request for information about an ADA issue that might be affecting your current property or a future project or anything. And we have a dedicated CASP expert, certified, that can address questions regarding ADA. And we know how important the American Disabilities Act is and what that means for us, and that the industry has to respond to new laws or changes that come out in construction design standards that affect ADA access, trends, feedback from customers, feedback from the disability industry. And so we have this Ask a CAS program that hopefully will provide some additional assistance. There's no fee, there's no charge in requesting that information. It's a service that we provide to the public and to our customers. And then, so what's ahead? And what's ahead is we all have recognized that COVID-19 restrictions have lasted much longer than maybe any of us originally expected. We've been able to really trench in and make some changes and look ahead of what things are going to look like in September and October or November. And so one of the things that we're looking at deploying is a virtual appointments online. And if you think about it, before COVID-19, you'd be able to go onto your application, like an open table, and book a restaurant table appointment. Things have changed a little bit since then, but why can't we do that at Development Services and for our customers? Why not? Why can't we have a tool that's online where if you want to meet with a reviewer, if you want to meet with a zoning staff, if you want to meet with someone at the DSD, you can go online and look at your appointment calendar and see, okay, well, the DSD has appointment slots available. I'm going to select a time and book a 30-minute time period. Have a virtual Teams meeting just like this, where you're sitting across from a reviewer. They can provide feedback to you in advance of maybe your project application, or maybe it's about a project that is in flight that you already have with you. So that's something that we're looking at deploying, and we are starting to test that actually this week. I've been waiting patiently. It's a Microsoft tool called Bookings. It's available to us. It had been available to the private sector, and for probably security reasons, they were still working on making it available to government sector, which started actually this week. So I'm really excited about that tool. I think it's going to be a game changer for us. I talk about it because I realize that even if COVID restrictions are lifted partially or entirely, that using technology like this is going to be part of our future as a choice of convenience, so that you can book an appointment online. You can share documents online, just like we're sharing the screen today. DSD's new contact center. So we are going to be deploying a new phone system. This was actually happening, again, another tool in advance of the COVID-19. The phone system that we have today, it's a Cisco phone system, but it is a bit dated. It's not the phones, it's the system behind the phones. And so we were able to keep our phones, our desktop phones, but we're changing the technology that's behind that. And that technology will allow more self-help features when calling DSD. It'll allow more, say, branches where you can go down and find different services within the telephone system. You can leave voicemails that are easily converted to emails that can go to DSD staff. There's a lot of features in data analytics that allow us to understand what are the types of things that customers need and want, what kind of questions and what services are they seeking, so that way we can make changes in the future by understanding what the data analytics are around telephone calls. And still, I'm going to say one of the communications first choices is to pick up a phone and call somebody. But texting and emailing, hopefully integrated into that, will help make a difference. And then lastly, we have a lot of work to do on digitizing our records. We're still a paper-driven society. I think we will be for quite some time. We're still going to rely upon paper and paper documents. Even with someone coming in with an electronic submittal, you're working on a large project or discretionary project, you may want to have printed documents that you meet with us and talk to us about. That's not the point of the online submittal, of trying to do away with that or anything. We're still going to need paper as a form of communication and sharing of information. But digitizing our 8 million plan and record documents that are sitting in this building and other buildings is an initiative that we're going to be taking on this year. And it's going to take us multiple years to complete that project. And so if you think about it, we did microfiche many years ago. Microfilm has been used as a way to condense and make records smaller. But we still have, millions of documents and plans that we're required to keep by law. And these are building plans. And keeping them by law doesn't necessarily mean we don't we don't have to keep them in paper. We can transition to a digital format. That'll make it easier for us to retain those, hopefully less cost and less square footage. You can put it into a server or put it into the cloud, and it doesn't have to be on the premises. If there's another fire in our building, it wouldn't affect the access to those records. We would have a redundant copy somewhere, and hopefully that's an initiative that will provide lasting and positive change for us into the future. But it's going to take us a number of years to complete that initiative. It's probably the largest of its kind, and we are the second largest permitting agency in the state of California. So you can only imagine what other jurisdictions might be going through as they look at transitioning to a digital world. I want to open it up now to any questions or feedback and spend some time here. I hope Kelly and Ali are still on the line if there's any questions that come up about, any projects or plan review or any of the technology. And they're also users of the online permitting system. We all are. We had to all learn it and be skilled in using the Acela system as well as the PTS and the paper-driven plan. So Jen?
Yeah, thank you, JC. I only saw one question so far in the chat, and I think you already addressed it. But just to confirm, James was asking about when might access to existing building drawings become available. An online version of the microfilm files would be a wonderful asset to the community. So I think that's what you just touched upon. And yeah, if anyone else has any questions, please enter them into the chat. Those are the only ones that's the only one I see so far.
Yeah, so Jen, on that question, we may start initiating some of the digitization later this year. So probably not until September, October. We have a contract with a company that already converts the microfiche, the paper to microfiche for us. And we have the ability to also move that into digital. What we need to do is develop a strategy for the database. And so that's sort of the next thing that we've been having conversations with our Department of IT and some outside consultants that assist with that over the last 6 weeks. And I think you're going to see some movement on us digitizing some records even this year. But when we have a complete plan, we'll publicize it. We'll walk through what it is and how long it's going to take to digitize the 8 million records.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so we got one more question. Will there be expediting services available? Will a location define curb to property lines? So I guess that's two separate questions. So first one, will there be expediting services available?
Well, yeah, and Kelly, do you want to address the Expedite program? I'm excited about what we just did, so we haven't really publicized it yet. Let's go for it.
Sure, yeah. When customers used to come into our building, it was really easy to ask for express processing, which basically cuts your timeline for review into half with an additional fee. So we realized that there was a deficiency in our form application, so we added the availability for customers to request express processing. We have two different types of say processing that speed up the review. There's also something called expedite. So I have a feeling you're talking about express when you say expediting, but our expedited process is typically reserved for either affordable housing, which is still available, or there's some sustainability expediting programs, and we do have information bulletins on it, and I can share the link for that. But yes, now that when you submit your form online for requesting a project, you can request express for an additional fee.
All right, thank you, Kelly. And then the second question was, will there be a location to find curb to property lines?
Kelly, are you familiar with that?
This is Ali. I think this is something that you still need to request, and I wonder if we have something on our website to ask for that. It's not my area.
Records.
Right.
I think it's through our records request form that's available online where you can ask for that information.
Thank you, Ali and Kelly.
Thank you. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? Please type them into the chat if you do. We'll hang out for a couple more minutes and see if anything else comes up.
Yeah, Jen, is there anything that anything come to mind after hearing about what we're doing, or have you heard about our permitting, or any questions that you might have?
I don't personally have any questions. I actually submitted one project for permit right before COVID-19 kind of hit us in San Diego. So we're still working on the paper process with that project, but I'm excited for the next one to use the electronic services.
Yeah, the one observation, Jen, and I don't have any, specific data to share at this moment, but just from an observation that what's happened in COVID-19 with the construction industry and the permit activity that we've seen, obviously there was a bit of a dip right after sort of that late March and early April, but the construction industry responded pretty quickly and figured it out, both on the architect design standpoint and the engineering and the plan submittal, and then also on the construction end of things, where we continue to see some high levels of activity of construction and permits. A lot of residential units, ADUs. We have obviously the temporary outdoor business. We don't see maybe as many of the larger projects that we had seen in the prior years. And that could be the result of just where we are in the residential construction industry. But we still see a lot of permit requests coming through. I don't know about you guys or what you're seeing, Jen, with that activity out there, but it seems like things have not slowed down the way some may have predicted with the construction sector.
Yeah, that's what we've seen as well. We thought maybe things would slow down a little bit, but it doesn't seem that they have. So we had another question, where can I give feedback on the permit process? And then Kelly provided within the chat box a link to where the feedback can be provided. So if anyone else is interested in providing feedback, that link is available in the chat, which everyone should be able to see.
Yeah, just from our main web page on the bottom right, there's a bar that says we want your feedback. When you click on that, you'll get a electronic form that you can fill out, providing any comments, concerns, or questions you have about our permitting process.
Awesome, thank you. All right, we got another question here. What are your criteria to determine the permit cost? I know square footage is one of them, but can you please explain more on other parameters which can affect the cost of the permit?
Well, sure. I mean, obviously it depends on the type of permit. So City of San Diego is unusual that we don't use valuation as a means of calculating our permitting fees. We actually do a cost study to become cost recoverable. We don't make money, we don't lose money. We try to be cost recoverable on all of our fees. We have multiple fee schedules on our website. They're typically in the 500 series. So when you go to our website and you go to our information bulletins, 501 is your building permit fee schedule, 502 I believe is engineering, 506 is fire, and then 103 is your mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Those fees are based upon the actual time it will take for us to review and inspect those permit costs. So it really depends on what your scope of work is. In addition, if you are proposing express services, that is a charge of 1.5 times the original fee plus a factor. I think it's about $600 for processing. So if you have any other questions specifically about a permit fee, you can always send an email to me or any of the other managers, and we can answer your question specifically.
Thanks, Kelly.
All right, we have another question in here. When will the new offices be ready in the old Manchester building pending COVID requirements?
We don't know. It's up to the city council. If what direction that they decide they're going to go in with that building, if they're going to make it suitable in terms of the asbestos remediation, or I think they're just going to continue to evaluate their options, and we'll hear later this fall. Meanwhile, we're settling back into our old building. Yeah, 1222 First Avenue, City Operations Building. And what we don't know is when we might return to having our doors open for customers here. So it could be that later this year we can see some sort of a open door to customer policy, and maybe it's restricted to the 3rd floor and the 1st floor, or maybe we bring our records division up to the 3rd floor to keep everything in one location. Currently, they're on the 2nd floor of our building, and so that's an option that we're considering as well. We want to make sure that we have things ready when we do return to having customers in the building.
All right. Anyone else have any other questions? That is the last one I've seen. Doesn't look like anyone else has any other questions. Do you have anything else you want to share?
Jen, I want to thank you very much for your time and being with your group today. I know you do important work out there for the industry. We appreciate that, and we thank you very much for your patience during the COVID-19 restrictions, and we're honestly looking for feedback. And so any feedback that you can give us, constructive or otherwise, to help improve our process and make it easier for customers to work with DSD, we'd like to hear that. And so, like what Kelly said, you could use that online form. You can also contact me if you wanted to have a meeting like this and discuss it further, or if you want us to come to any other organization or group to help explain our online permitting process, we're happy to do that. So that's something that's important to us as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciated the presentation.
Thank you.
All right. And that concludes our webinar. So thank you everyone for joining.